Hurricane. Well, what's in a word? I'll tell you what, it's enough to make a sailor's blood run cold, the very sound of it. And rightly so. I had the misfortune to get involved with a hurricane back in the 1980s on passage from Beaufort, North Carolina, down to the West Indies. And it's not an experience I would want to repeat. We came out of it in one piece and I'm grateful. So what am I doing writing a novel about it? I'm better known for textbooks, history books, travel books. Why a novel? Well, everybody's got one in them somewhere, haven't they? And I've written it anyway. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to read you a little bit from the closing passages where our hero actually does become involved with a hurricane. His boat, which is a traditional old fishing boat, is anchored in what should have been the lee of a small Caribbean island, but turns out to be on the windward side as the hurricane reverses the wind. He's been away from the boat, and his mate, an old shipmate who's a good seaman, has set his boat up for him so that he's got a chance of surviving what's coming. There are some big ships anchored to seaward of him. And that's the position when we join him on board. It looked as though we were currently lying to the big fisherman-style anchor on the main chain, but that my heavy plough-type hook with its springy nylon warp was taking a proportion of the strain from out on the port bow. The heavy plaited rope leading all the way to starboard must have been attached to the Danforth sand anchor. I realised the trouble Ralph must have had to find that one in its stowage down in the bilge. Whatever he'd thought of my morals, he'd done a real sailor's job for my boat. I knew the extreme length of the plaited rope and realised that he'd rowed the Danforth a full 100 yards before he'd dropped it, because there was only about 50 feet left on board out of the 400. That would give the anchor immense holding power when the time came. Although the wind was still steady, the cloud base was right down now and the rain was coming at me horizontally like stair rods. I was satisfied there was nothing more I could do with the anchors, so the next job was to take off the sails and stow them below. There would be no chance of sailing out until after the blow, so everything possible must be done to reduce the boat's wind resistance. The sails took the best part of an hour and cost me several fingernails. Next came the running rigging. A bit of rope can't be important, somebody once said to me. How wrong he was. I pointed out that the throat halyard alone on Dream went up and down the mast 4 times. It's 3/4 of an inch in diameter. That's 160 feet of rope, and every 16 feet represents a square foot of windage. 10 square feet's the top half of the proverbial toilet door. I wasn't wasting my time. The barometer was continuing to plummet and the temperature had gone colder when the last of the halyards and purchases ran through the blocks and fell to the deck with a clatter. I looked aloft. Dream was stripped down to just 1 rope on each mast. These were left to pull me aloft if we survived, and I had to re-rag the others. I hoped I'd be interested in sending the halyards back up again after the blow. I wouldn't be worried about such trivia if Dream ended up on the beach with her bilge stove in and a saloon full of sand. The vision welled up clear for a few alarming seconds before I banished it. This was a time for positive thinking. There was no room for negative thoughts. I had done all I could. So how did this book come about? Well, I'll tell you. Years ago, Ros, my wife, and my daughter Hannah and I came back to England. We'd been away in America and the West Indies and actually the Arctic for quite some time. And we felt it was time we put our daughter ashore and gave her a proper schooling, because we've been teaching her on the boat ourselves up until then. She was 7. Now then, we ended up in the Bewley River on the south coast of England, and we had a lovely berth. It wasn't alongside, it was in the middle of the river, and we had to row the daughter ashore every day to go to school. And the question arose, what were we going to do for money? Well, we didn't have any, and we lived on the boat because we had no other home. So I got a job teaching sailing at the National School up in North Wales. So every week I used to get on my motorbike on small hours of Monday morning and ride away up the A5 to Holyhead and find my work. In the autumn, that all folded up. No more work. What were we going to do? Well, I started writing. I wrote articles frantically, which people rejected. I lectured whenever I could. I sent out a round robin to the yacht clubs, and a few people hired me, but not many, and we were pretty desperate. And then Ros said, why don't you write a novel? There's money in novels. I said, well, I can't think there is. For every novel that makes money, there's 100 that don't, and it's a lot of work. But we decided that we had nothing else, so we'd give it a go. And Ros rescued a roll of wallpaper from the skip at Bewley. And we brought it back to the boat, spread it out, and we plotted a novel on it. It's the only way to do it, really. Because otherwise, you don't know who said it. It gets complicated. You don't know who said what, and who's where, and who's dead, and who's not. And it's surprising how much work there is in plotting out a novel of this nature, because it's a thriller. Next thing is, you look at it and you think, oh no, the sheer length of the work is utterly demoralising. You think, well, I've got to write 100,000 words here. That's like 50 magazine articles. It's just impossible. It's like looking at a great big mountain when you're right at the bottom and thinking you'll never get there. But I've climbed a few mountains as a young fella, and I know what the secret is. The secret is not to look at the summit at all. You just look at the next little rise that's maybe a mile away, and you just keep going like that. And that's how you write a book. You plan it out, you work out how many words approximately are going to be in each section and what's going to happen, and you plot it out in a sort of table, and then you get to work. And you write one bit, and you think, well, that's it, that's a result, satisfaction. You don't feel so bad. And you do not look at the summit, because you think you're never going to get there. Do it like that, and you do. It survives, and it's remarkable. So, I wrote the novel. But round about the time I was finishing it, I got taken up by the magazines. To start with, nobody knew anything about me, and they didn't know I could write or had been to sea or anything else. But now, suddenly, they all wanted me. And I got columns and regular articles. And I was asked to write a textbook by the RYA, the governing body of sailing. And so it goes. Suddenly I had work. And the novel got put on the back burner because, of course, a novel is a speculation. You don't know you're going to make anything with it. You probably won't. But this other work was definitely okay. So the novel got tucked away. It was put in a locker on the boat, and I forgot all about it. 40 years later, here I am in my nice little study in my cottage in the New Forest, and it's winter, last winter, 24, 25. I was writing a memoir about my early days at sea. And of course, it's all about me. And I thought, it's me, this. People don't want to know about me. I was uncomfortable about it. I thought, what am I going to do? And Ros said, do you remember the novel? And I said, well, yeah, I do, actually. She said, well, here it is. And she pulled it out of her bottom drawer of my old music cabinet, which is behind me here. And we got it out, and we thought, well, let's have a read of it. And we had a read of it. Do you know, it was good. We liked it. The only thing was, it was shockingly politically incorrect. I mean, we've gone 40 years, we've gone a great distance since the early 1980s. My goodness me, it's a different world. So all that had to be cleaned up and sorted out. We put some different characters in. We basically rewrote it and got it finished sailing down the Baltic last summer. And then we published it in the autumn. And it's out there now, and it's doing well. Hurricane Force is what it's called. You can buy it from Amazon, or you can buy it from my website, which is tomcunliffe.com. I'll put them up in a minute, then you can have a look. But honestly, the reviews have been fantastic. Some really serious literary people have said, this is a book you cannot put down. Read it, you won't be disappointed. Well, there you are. Bye me, I'm off for a coffee now. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the book.